Check it out.
Look at this fish cooler. Look.
That fish cool or what? All right, let's start it. Quinn, in.
Okay, squid in this.
Oh yeah, it's the fighting honk. Quinn, in 3. Ready? You gotta look at the camera. In 3, 2, 1, 0. All right. What's up, YouTube? This is Russ from Russell's Reef coming to you with episode 28 of the Waterbox 70.3 build.
And I got you guys and TV audience.
Thanks for tuning in, TV audience. This episode we're going over.
This is TV audience.
We're going over our top 5 mistakes.
You're the TV audience.
You're the TV audience from YouTube.
You're the TV audience from YouTube. Alright, bye TV audience.
Bye, TV audience. Top 5 mistakes. Let's check it out.
Let's check it out.
Let's see how it came out, dude.
Alright guys, let's jump right into it. For my number 5 mistake, it's not so much a mistake, just something I would have done different had I started over. I probably would have bought bigger SPS frags instead of starting with half-inch frags. I would have started with maybe like an inch frag or bigger. I just feel like when they're so small, it takes them so long to encrust and just gets to the point where they're going to branch off. And if you just go a little bigger, like an inch frag, inch and a half with multiple branches, things take off much quicker. So that's actually something that I got to do after the tank crash. I definitely bought a little bigger frags. So I'm not talking colonies, but just about inch frags versus those more expensive little half-inch nubs that some people like to sell. For my number 4 mistake, I have to say it is assuming that dipping my corals in Bayer would get rid of all of my pests. To really stop pests from getting into the system, I think you really do have to quarantine and set up a quarantine tank. I definitely had those little tiny black bugs that eat Monteporas and SPS. They snuck through, and after some testing, they definitely survived Bayer dips. So I think just assuming that Bayer dips are enough was kind of a mistake. So moving forward, I would just keep that in mind. I don't think I would do anything different necessarily, but I definitely won't assume that dipping something in Bayer is going to solve all my problems as far as pests. My number 3 mistake is right along the same lines when it comes to coral inspection and quarantine and dipping. My mistake was introducing Aptasia into my tank early on. The crazy thing is I know better. I've been in this hobby for a while, and I still bought that frag, that Zoa frag, and I saw the little tiny Aptasia on it, and I just still put it in. I think in the past I had beaten Aptasia in a smaller nano tank with just peppermint shrimps, and I have them at bay in my tank, but it would be so nice not to have to worry about it. It definitely comes into play when I'm buying fish. I don't want to buy any wrasses in my tank that might eat peppermint shrimps, because then how am I going to get rid of the Aptasia? And it's just kind of a headache. I also don't feed as much as I would if there was an Aptasia in the tank. Just doing that broadcast feeding, the Aptasia will explode. So it's definitely affected my tank a lot. It's affected the color of my SPS, because I would run a much higher nutrient system if I didn't have Aptasia in my tank. So next time, if I even see an inkling of Aptasia, I will not put anything in my tank. I just have a question for everyone that's watching, because I know everyone knows that Aptasia is bad, but I'm just curious how many people actually are successful in keeping Aptasia completely out of their tank, because my guess is it's not many. Even though you can usually see them, they still sneak in somehow. So yeah, number 3 is to keep those Aptasia out at any costs. All right, getting down to business with mistake number 2. This is one that everyone always tells you, and I still never listen, and it's using RODI water from the fish store, or not making my own water. I didn't make my own water for the first year, and I just bought it from the fish store. And I know for a fact now that contributed to a lot of my algae issues. I know this because after I made the switch to my own RODI unit using my own 0 TDS water, I was out of water and I went to the fish store, just filled up 3 jugs and used that water for top off and 1 water change, so about 15 gallons. And from the moment I put that in my ATO and did that water change, I had a giant algae outbreak. So when people tell you to use your own RODI water, they are telling the truth. I cannot recommend it enough. I mean, I just think it's very hard for these fish stores to keep 0 TDS water with all the turnover they have. So mistake number 2 is not getting my own RODI water from the very beginning. I will not make that mistake again. And if you are not currently making your own water, I would highly recommend it. I think you'll be surprised at the difference, especially if you have algae issues in your tank. All right, on to the number 1 mistake that I made in the last 2 years with my Reef tank. This one should be well known for anyone that follows the channel. My number 1 mistake was adding Flux RX to my system to try to eliminate some of my bryopsis. This ended up killing all of my SPS corals with the exception of my Montiporas and Digitatas. So I will never, ever use a fluconazole product again. I know some people have success using it with tanks, but if I'm running SPS, after what I witnessed, I would not ever use it again. So yeah, that's my biggest mistake, and the one that I really wish that I could take back, because this tank would be a whole different tank had it not completely crashed a year ago. With that being said, it did allow me to kind of rethink and replant all my SPS, and I think the tank probably turned out better in the long run, but it's just devastating to lose all those corals, especially when you know it's absolutely your fault. That's the only change I made, and it was instantaneous. So no more fluconazole for me. I have to say it did eliminate my bryopsis and all of the algae in the tank, so it did do something good. But for SPS tanks, I will not be using that ever again. I have one more honorable mention mistake to wrap up the video. This mistake is basically underestimating the power of nutrients in the system. Being able to document the tank through YouTube, it's easy for me to tell when the tank is lacking nutrients and when the colors of my SPS are fading. And I think I just lost track of that for about maybe over the last 6 months. I started noticing all of my corals, my SPS, the colors were fading and they just didn't look as bright as they normally did. And this is because the tank was lacking nutrients. I finally tested and my nitrate is like close to 0 and my phosphate is close to 0. So just keeping an eye on nutrients, especially as your SPS corals get bigger and bigger and bigger, it's very important. So if I don't get more fish now, I have to start dosing some nitrate and phosphate just to keep those colors up, which I have started doing, and I've definitely noticed a big difference. So yeah, just keep an eye on those nutrients as your colonies get bigger, and I think you'll be a lot better off. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time when I do a 2-year update on my tank.